Welcome back to part 2 of this week's episode. And as we teased you with earlier, we said we're going to talk about the Patriot Arsenal. But before we get into the Patriot Arsenal, we're going to talk about actual patriots. And last week, we started a new program, a recommended reading program. And each week until I decide I don't want to do it anymore, I'm going to do a recommended reading. And if you're going to be a student of the gun, you need to be informed and you need to be educated and you need to be armed with the facts. And so what I'm going to do is some of the books that if I haven't read it, or at least the half of it or the beginning of it, I'm not going to recommend it. But the following book I've actually read twice, and it's called Founding Brothers by Joseph J. Ellis. And we like to talk about George Washington and Jefferson and Franklin as founding fathers, but in the book it says that they were kind of brothers in their struggle to create this new nation. And what you'll find in this book, you're going to find detailed stories that go beyond your history book, beyond your 10th grade American history class. And let's face it, how many of you guys out there today actually remember what you learned in 10th grade history? Probably not a lot, not many. And unfortunately, very unfortunately, if you went to a public school in the last 10 to 15 years, they probably just glossed right over that whole American history thing. I
was just about to say that when I graduated high school, I was very far behind in knowing the actual truth about America and the American history. So everything that I know right now is because of Professor Paul and my independent study.
So to pick up a copy of Founding Brothers. It has a lot of in-depth stories about Jefferson and Adams, Washington, Hamilton, Aaron Burr, and things about, things that you won't read in a normal history book. And, like we said, right now as a nation, a lot of times we take it for granted. We've said this before. People take this nation for granted. They just assume that it was always going to happen, that it's always going to be here just by default. And the fact is that there were men 200 years ago that devoted their entire lives to creating something new, something that in the world had never been seen, a representative republic that actually worked, that actually had legs. I mean, there had been representative republics and democracies in small forms throughout history, but never on a grand scale as was put forth, in 1775, 76, and so forth. So we recommend, and Jared will put the link up for you if you go to studentofthegunradio.com. There'll be a direct link there for the book Founding Brothers by Joseph J. Ellis. Now, we've got another Go Team moment, and we want to talk about this Go Team moment before we get into the hardware section, before we start talking about hardware. And this came from Baytown, Texas, and Baytown, Texas is actually just, I think it's a little bit southeast of Houston. Geographically, if you're not a Texas person, it probably doesn't matter to you, but here's what happened. Turns out an 18-year-old boy was staying at his grandmother's house. The grandmother had recently had to go live in a nursing care facility. And so he was taking care of her home. He's at the house. He's sleeping. He hears noise, crash, something's going on. He grabs a shotgun, goes downstairs, and he finds two felons, two scumbags have broken into his grandma's house. So he orders them, throw them up. I mean, he tells them, stick them up, raise your hands, or whatever, surrender. Well, they decide, nah, we're not afraid of you, and they turn on him. Well, he's not having any of that. He shoots them both. One dies on the spot, and the other one flees and is captured and is now in the hospital in critical condition at airtime. Both these guys were on probation, and the sheriff in the area said that he believed that they were involved in previous crimes, that they had burglarized other places before they got to Grandma's house. So the great thing about Texas and Texas people, now not everyone in Texas is perfect. I understand that. It's not perfect, but it's more perfect than New Jersey, more perfect than Illinois. Ask yourself, be honest with yourself. Jared wants to say something. Jared, jump in, dude.
I was going to say anything's more perfect than Illinois or New York or New Jersey or California or the new one. What was the new one?
Colorado, yeah. Man. They're trying to out liberal California. But ask yourself, be honest. If this would have happened in New Jersey, what do you think would have happened?
The kid would have been demonized.
Yeah, the kid would be in jail. They probably would have arrested the kid. Hell, Bloomberg would have locked him up.
And this is an 18-year-old kid. You don't think it's already going to affect how he thinks or his life?
Well, but anyway, back to the story directly is not only did the sheriff say, hey, he was in fear for his life. He did absolutely right. No charges filed. And they interviewed the neighbors, and the neighbors essentially were like, rock on. Good job. Go team. We don't need any more felons we don't need people creeping around our neighborhood, breaking into our houses, stealing from us. No thanks. We don't need any more of that. And one of these guys will never steal again. And the other one, hopefully he'll do a long time in prison. But at very least, he'll have a lingering memory of what happens when you break into grandma's house.
And from what I noticed from the video, the majority of the residents were elderly. And what if those two men would have broken into an elderly woman's house?
Yeah, and see, that's something that we've talked about previously. And it's a good point, Jared. Thanks for bringing it up. You say, well, just let them take the TV and file an insurance claim and get a new TV. That's what your Brady campaign people say.
What just happened to our elderly couple, an elderly couple?
Well, the husband was murdered and the wife was raped.
Yep.
Yeah. And folks, now if you have, I hate to watch the news. We don't watch news because we don't have TV here. We deliberately don't have network television in this house because it's all bad news. It's either bad news or it's liberal propaganda, and we're not down with that. But if you do get your news from the internet or wherever, you'll find that in the last 2 weeks, there's just been horrible, egregious, violent crimes being committed against people for no other reason than that they were there. That was their error. That was what they did wrong, was they were present when the bad people were there. Or they were at their home, and so they shouldn't have been there, whatever. People are getting robbed, murdered, raped, just brutalized across this nation for no good reason. If you are not, this is a good time. Let's finish this up, and then we'll go ahead with our 3-second rule. Okay, so Go Team used a 12-gauge shotgun, took care of business. We got one felon who's DOA, room temperature. That was the choice he made. He decided to be a scumbag and to rob people. And when you decide that, hey, I'm going to be a scumbag and I'm going to rob people, that's the risk you take.
What is it? God will judge our enemies. It's our duty to
arrange a meeting.
Yeah, arrange a meeting.
Yeah, well, this teenager in Texas arranged the meeting for that one, and the other one, we don't know what his story is right now. He's lingering, but at least he's got a souvenir of his experience, and maybe that'll be a little life lesson. Maybe he want to go get a job selling shoes or something, not robbing people. But Go Team in Texas. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about, and let's tell you what, Jared. Let's do the 3-second rule after we talk about Barry. Can we do that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, we had a Go Team incident, which makes everyone happy. In segment 1 of this episode, we talked about anti-gunners' efforts were failing across the nation. Good news. We've got some not so good news for you. If you haven't heard it, I'm about to disappoint you. But His Majesty, Comrade Barry, has decided that he can't get what he wants by going through the Senate and the Congress. And what happens when you're a dictator and you throw a little temper tantrum, you decide, well, I'm just going to issue an executive order. And if I can't get my way by law because the people don't want it, well, forget these peasants. I'll just do what I want. We got the whole Eric Cartman, I do what I want. Right, Jared?
He does what he wants.
I do what I want. You peasants, whatever peasants. So Comrade Barry this week decided he was going to put his name on a couple of executive orders. Now, let's talk about executive orders. Is it legal for a president to issue an executive order? Absolutely it is. And executive orders were designed for the management of the executive branch of government. They're designed to manage the government. They're not designed, executive orders were not designed to dictate law from the Oval Office. That's not why they're there. And people's like, well, Bush issued executive orders and Reagan did, and everybody else, you can't say that, only Comrade Barry's issuing orders. No, the purpose of an executive order is to administer the function of the government itself, not to make law. Are we down with that? Jared, you down with that?
An executive order is not a law. Correct?
No, it is not. An executive order, the reason that the president has the authority to issue an executive order is not to create a law that he couldn't get passed by Congress. An executive order is there to manage the government. Okay. It's like saying everyone's going to wear, blue jeans on Friday. I'll give you an executive order. Everyone has to wear Hawaiian shirts every Friday, whatever. But when you're a petulant child and you don't get your way, what you do is say, well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around Congress, and if they're not going to give me my way, well, I'm just going to issue new executive orders. Well, the two orders. Number one, it's going to ban the reimportation of military surplus firearms to private entities. Well, what does that mean? What it means is this, is a lot of you guys will know or be aware of, is the fact that over the last 50, 60, 70, 100 years or more, and even going back farther than that, the United States government has done things, has either sold or given really great deals to our friends and allies in the arms department, right? And after World War II, as many of you know, we had tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of surplus firearms. We had Garands, we had carbines, we had Thompsons, we had, all these firearms. And what did we do? Well, we sold them, we lent them, we allowed our allies to have them. And, well, as technology has improved and increased, your M1 Garand in 30-06 is not the cutting edge of firearms technology anymore. And it hasn't been for, whether you love the Garand or not, it is not the cutting edge in military technology here in 2013. It is a surplus firearm, surplus military gun. Same thing with the M1 carbine. And there have been thousands upon thousands of M1 Garands and M1 carbines that are sitting in South Korea, in limbo, because American firearms importers, American firearms manufacturers and importers, what they want to do is they wanted to re-import these guns, the Garands and the carbines, into the United States to allow American citizens to purchase them. Think about it. If you're a gun guy and you could get a good deal on a Garand, wouldn't you buy it just because it's a piece of history, or an M1 carbine? And the Civilian Marksmanship Program, the CMP, which has been in place for, I think, 110 years, the Civilian Marksmanship Program has been in place. They survive by providing CMP participants with low-cost firearms. Let's face it, if you had to go out and spend $2,000 on a rifle to participate in a civilian marksmanship program, most people probably wouldn't do it. Well, what Comrade Barry has done is he threw a little fit, and he's decided he's going to issue an executive order forbidding the reimportation of these guns, because that's going to keep guns off of our streets and out of the wrong hands. That's right. That's what we say. We're going to keep guns out of the wrong hands. Ask yourself this. Do you really, in your heart of hearts, believe that the Crips and the Bloods have been salivating, just waiting for an opportunity to go purchase 8-round Garand rifles? Do you believe that? That they, that the organized crime figures nationwide and the drug gangs have been waiting for someone to bring in these M1 carbines so that they could arm themselves. But darn it, Barry's not going to let them in. Now we can't have them. It's bull sausage. It's baloney sausage, folks, and don't buy it for 1 second. You say, well, what are you getting so exercised about, Paul? What's the big deal? Well, what the big deal is, you say, well, why would we issue an executive order forbidding that? Who is it going to punish? Is it going to punish the criminal? Are criminals going to be hindered from this point forward? Can we all say that the answer is no? So, well, then why do it? Who gets punished? It's you, Mr. and Mrs. America. You gun owners. You stubborn gun owners that won't give me my way. You stubborn gun owners that called up your congressmen and your senators and told them not to vote for gun control. I got something for you. I'm going to sign my name on this bill, and I'm not going to allow those guns into the country. So there.
Didn't you know the reason that Chicago is the murder capital of the world?
Why is it the murder capital of the world?
Because the criminals in Chicago get their guns from around Chicago, where everybody's allowed to have them.
That's right. That's right. That's how the wrong hands get guns. There's too much freedom going on out there. Now, the other executive order that Barry signed, he's altering the way that Class 3 firearms are bought and transferred. Now, a lot of you guys out there may or may not have ever purchased a what's referred to as a Class 3 firearm. Thanks to the 1934 and then the subsequent 1968 Firearms Control Acts, in order to own a suppressor or a silencer for a firearm, you have to file a special paperwork with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives and Chips, and pay them a $200 transfer tax. Now, that's $200 every time that changes hands. Not one time, but every single time, in order to own a silencer or a short-barreled rifle or a short-barreled shotgun or what have you. And you can purchase these as a private citizen. Or you can purchase them and you can own them by a corporation. And a lot of people have them in their corporations. If you're a professional, firearms training academy or what have you, if you have a corporation, you can have these Class 3 items signed out to your corporation. Also, you can put them into what they call a trust, a firearms trust. So when you die, whoever you designate will get these and so forth. Well, they've decided that they need to keep guns out of the wrong people's hands. They need to toughen up and tighten the restrictions. Apparently, it's not strict enough. Paying $200 and saying, "Mother, may I," and filling out all the paperwork with the accompanying fingerprints and so forth, that's not enough. Because I guess when you live in Washington, D.C., you look out across the nation and think, boy, there's just thousands upon thousands of murders being committed by people who are using legally owned silencers. What? There's not? Oh, well, there must be thousands of people being murdered by legally owned short-barreled rifles.
So explain to me why a short-barreled long gun is more dangerous than a long-barreled long gun.
I don't know.
It shoots the same bullets, right?
Shoots the same ammunition, yeah. Okay. So, a rifle that has a barrel that's 16 inches is safe and is okay, but one that has a barrel that's 14 inches just became unsafe, and you have to get a special permit to own it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but usually if you have a longer barrel with more rifling, the bullet is more accurate. No,
well, we don't want to get into that right here, but no, there's no rhyme or reason to it, folks. There's no rhyme or reason to it. The NFA, National Firearms Act, it did nothing to curb crime, to reduce murder. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all horse garbage. And the whole purpose of this, you say, well, then why did Comrade Barry do that? Well, because Comrade Barry is a petulant child, and that's who is punished. Ask yourself, who is affected by this? Is the criminal affected? No. Is the government affected? No, because they're not affected. It's you, Mr. and Mrs. America, you stubborn gun people who refuse to allow me to have my way. Well, I tell you what. I can't tell you. It's like the Class 3. My Class 3 dealer here in southern Mississippi, he told me, he said, in 2008, we were averaging about 30 days for paperwork turnaround, to submit it, to have it sent back, to get our federal transfer tax stamps from the government. It was about 30 days in 2008. Well, we know what was going on in 2008, right? Well, now, today in 2013, the time wait is anywhere from 6 to 7 to possibly 8 months. Think about that. If you are running a business, let's say you're running a flower shop, and somebody comes in and they say, I want to buy some flowers. And you say, okay, it's going to be $30. And you say, all right. And they give you the $30 and you say, come back in the morning and I'll have your bouquet for you. And they say, all right, well, that's nice. I want to, I'll get it in the morning. And then they say, you know what? Come back in a week and I'll have it for you. And you'd be like, what? I'm not waiting a week. Would you keep going to that same florist? Of course you wouldn't. But when you're the government, what choice do you have? Oh, well, you want it? We're in a position where with the class 3 is like they can't make it illegal. They can't go in. They can't convince the Congress and the Senate to abolish it. But what we'll do is we'll make the process so painful and so arduous and so time consuming that you'll not want to do it. When people sit down and they fill out, it's a long form. It is a very long form. Thank goodness for dedicated Class 3 firearms dealers, because they can walk you through this process. It's more difficult. There's more paperwork involved than you would imagine. But who is punished by that? So you think that, let's say, Jimmy the crack dealer is going to go to a Class 3 guy, sit down, give him his license, fill out all the paperwork, submit a $200 application fee, wait 6 months, get his tax stamp, pick up his Class 3 firearm, and then go commit a crime with it. Really? That's how it works now in America? Come on, wake up. The only reason that this happened, the executive orders that were signed this week by Comrade Barry, your master, because your master has decided that you don't need it. End of story.
I've been stewing over here over this headline, and I was trying not to say anything about it, but I can't help it because it's in bold and it's jumping out at my face. It says, closing a loophole to keep some of the most dangerous guns out of the wrong hands. Okay. Aren't all guns dangerous, equally dangerous?
Not in the mystical, magical world of Comrade Barry and his ilk.
The wording of these headlines it's manipulating minds.
You mean they're genuinely deceptive? They're meant so that people who don't understand or are not paying attention will be deceived? Is that what you're trying to say, Jared? Are you trying to say that there are people that would write a headline deliberately designed to deceive you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Oh, man, I tell you what, we got a lot of good stuff. We still have good stuff to talk about here on Student of the Gun. So, don't get too depressed. Don't get too depressed. But before we get into it, now I promise you we're going to talk about some cool stuff. But before we get into that, what Jared just said, though, it reminds me of something actually that I was reading my monthly newsletter. I get a monthly newsletter from Hillsdale College, and a lot of you guys out there probably get it as well. It's called Imprimis. I was reading Imprimis here just the last week or so, and the subject of this month's newsletter was actually about children's literature or teen literature, and the author was talking about how the use of literature and the written word to influence, or how it influences the thoughts of young people. And essentially the phrase that she used, it was called normalization, or to normalize. And in psychology, if you amateur psychologists out there or psychiatrists will know that when as a society, whether it's through the mainstream media, whether it's television, radio, newspapers, nobody reads newspapers anymore, the internet, whatever. When you write a story, if you refer or discuss a certain subject in a certain light over and over and over again, even though it has no basis in truth, what you're doing is you are establishing a norm, or you're creating normalization, or you're normalizing something. For instance, a lot of folks have said, my kids get frustrated because I point out fallacies in television and movies. And they're like, Dad, just watch the movie. But when I see something that is wrong or purposely, and I say, and they're like, well, they didn't do it on purpose. They didn't say that on purpose. They didn't present that sentence or that idea deliberately. Folks, I've been doing TV for a while now. I've been writing professionally for over 20 years. Nothing that is produced, and when I say produced, whether it's television, radio, the written word, nothing that is produced and edited is done by accident. Every single word that you read, every scene on a television show or a movie has been written, it has been scripted, it has been produced, and it has been edited. It is there on purpose. None of it is an accident. So if you're watching, I'll give you a great example, global warming. And I don't really want to talk about global warming, but if you watch sitcoms, if you watch movies, they throw global warming out as if it is fact. That's been an established fact, and we just need to move on. Everybody already accepts it. Everybody knows it. Well, that's not the case. And if you're a thinking person, you understand that that's not the case. And you say, well, if it's not, then why in my favorite sitcom do they throw it out there and they say it as if it is fact? Well, because if you say that enough times, you create a norm, and then people who are not paying close attention just accept it. They will just accept it as that. We talked about this just briefly and during one of our homerooms, we talk about gun permits for a gun. And if you watch movies, if you listen to radio shows or what, well, not necessarily radio shows, but television, movies, or whatever, they're always talking about the people on the TV, your favorite cop drama. If you have a favorite cop drama, I don't watch cop dramas because they frustrate me and they annoy me, but because I was a cop and I never experienced any of the stuff that's on TV. But why do they always say things like, well, did he have a gun permit? Did he have a permit for that gun? That gun had no permit. Why do they say that? Is it because everywhere in America that people are required to get special permission from the government to own a firearm? Well, no. Unless you live in the People's Republic somewhere, whether it's Massachusetts or the city of New York or, wherever, these slave states, unless you live in an occupied slave state, you don't have to get a special permit from the government to own a gun. Jared, we went to Texas 2 weeks ago, did we not?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
Tell the audience, in one evening, now, we were out, and after we finished up with our day's activities, we were in our Student of the Gun official clothes, and it said Student of the Gun on them. So you run into people, and they're like, hey, what's Student of the Gun? What's that all about? Now, Jared, tell the audience what we ran into that night on two separate occasions.
We were out to dinner, and then after we went to dinner, we went to a store to pick up some stuff for the trip. But anyway, the point is that we had two separate people, at least two separate people that I can remember, that asked us what Student of the Gun was, which is normal. We'll tell them what it is. And then they both of those people that I remember said, well, don't you have to have a permit to own those guns or own guns? And we're like, no. But to one of them's credit, she stated that, oh, maybe I watch too much Lifetime or something like that.
Too much TV.
Yeah, too much TV.
Yeah, and they were both of them. That were young women. One of them was our waitress, and the other one was the clerk that checked us out at the store. And the waitress said something about guns or something, and she says, well, I don't own any guns. And we're like, well, and we were in Texas. We were in Houston.
Does Houston count as Texas?
Well, it still counts as Texas, yeah. We weren't in Massachusetts or New York. We were in Texas, and this young woman, she goes, well, I don't have a gun. I've never shot a gun. And she says, don't you have to have a permit to own one? I'm like, no. Why do you think that? And the same thing, the clerk at the little girl at the store, and she said something about guns or whatever. And she goes, well, don't you have to have a permit to own a gun or get a permit to own a gun? And she's the one who said, oh, I must be watching too much TV or whatever. But just that little snippet right there, just that little anecdote, you say, well, why would people think, why do non-gun people think that you have to have a permit? Well, it's because they heard it on TV. How many cop dramas have they watched where they say, oh, a gun permit, or you have a permit for that, or I have a permit for that, or what have you? It's normalization. That's why you hear and see things that you do, because they're trying to set the tone. Don't just accept it. You need to question it. Okay, enough depressing stuff. Let's talk about something fun or something interesting, something that is positive. Well, about, I guess 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, I was introduced to a company called Patriot Cases, or patriotcases.net. You can check them out on the internet. But what they do is, and my new friend, Brack Wilson, up there in North Carolina, what he does is he takes SKB. And if you guys are gun people, you know SKB cases. They make a lot of great variety of different sizes of hard cases. You can put handguns, rifles, shotguns, what have you. Well, I talked to my friend Brack up there at Patriot Cases, and he was telling me about one of the newest products that he does. What he does is he takes these standard cases with standard foam inserts, and he customizes them to fit whatever it is that you need to have put in that case. Whether it's a Perazzi shotgun or a small case, you want to keep a couple of handguns in, or rifles, or what have you. And one of the big items that he does now, because of the popularity of 3-gun competitions, is he does a custom 3-gun competition case. And essentially is he'll have these 3-gunners, they'll give them the exact specs for their rifles, and not just the design or the make or model of the rifle, but how is it set up? Does it have, a variable power optic on it? Does it have extended handguards? What have you? You get him all that information, and what he'll do is produce a custom foam insert that will fit your guns. Whether it's, if you're a 3-gunner, you're going to have at least one rifle, and it's probably going to be some type of an AR-15 style rifle. You're going to have some type of a extended barrel, extended tube shotgun, and you're going to have at least one, probably a couple of different handguns. And that gave me a great idea. I'm not a 3-gun competition type of guy, but, I believe that I know my way around a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. And rather than do a 3-gun competition case, what I was thinking is, why not come up with a Patriot arsenal? So we've got Patriot cases, and I sent the information to Brack for the exact specs for an M4 style carbine with the optic and everything on it, for a Mossberg Model 590 pump action shotgun, and then the specs for 2 striker fired pistols. And so what he did was he did a custom setup for that, so that in one large hard case, what I can fit is I can fit a rifle, a shotgun, 2 pistols, and they also do, of course, there's plenty of room in the foam to do cutouts to put spare magazines, AR magazines, pistol magazines, what have you. So what you can essentially do is you can essentially assemble your entire Patriot arsenal all in one kit. It's one hard case with wheels and handles, and you can secure it, whatever you need to do. Well, what that gave me the opportunity to do was to examine that idea or that concept in depth. And if you're following us on studentofthegun.com, if you are a newsletter subscriber, what you should know by now is the latest article on Student of the Gun is about the Patriot Arsenal. But we know that we've got a lot of people that are listening to us right now that you might have picked up Student of the Gun for the very first time this week, or you listen to the podcast, you listen to the radio show, but you don't get a chance to read. That's fine. We're going to take a minute and we're going to discuss it. And essentially, I'm going to talk about why I decided to pick the guns that I picked. Now, obviously, in the United States of America today, if you live in free America, there is a greater and a wider variety of firearms available to you than there ever has been. Now, I know that our liberties are under assault every single day, but despite that, you still can, get online, go into your favorite gun shop, and You know, the world is almost your oyster as far as what you want. And so let's say you do a rifle, you do a shotgun, and a handgun. Now, which rifle are you going to choose? Now, this is kind of a no-brainer for me, but I wanted to take the opportunity to spell out why I made the decisions that I made. And the decision that I made was obviously some type of an M4 or an AR style rifle. And we're talking about a rifle that is built around Gene Stoner's original design in 5.56/223. And for those of you that don't, you're like, well, what's the difference between a 5.56 and a 223? Essentially, think of it like 38 Special and 357 Magnum. You can put 38 Specials into a 357 Magnum handgun, right? Yes, you can. But you can't put 357s into a 38. So if you have a rifle that is chambered for the true 5.56 millimeter cartridge, you can chamber 223 Remington in that as well. But if you have a rifle that is chambered very specifically for the commercial cartridge 223 Remington, it is not safe to load 5.56 millimeter ammunition in there. 5.56 is loaded a little bit hotter. It has a very, very slight difference, almost imperceptible to the human eye, but there is enough of a difference that you don't want to be trying to shove 5.56. And that is that is the reason that almost every one of your black rifle manufacturers, they just chamber the guns in a genuine 5.56. Very rarely will you find a modern self-loading black rifle that is chambered specifically only for the 223. But I digress. So why should you own a 5.56 AR M4 style rifle? Well, number one, as far as centerfire rifles are concerned, that is one of the mildest recoiling centerfire rifles that you're going to encounter. It's easy for everyone in the family to operate, whether they're teenagers, whether they're women, females with a slight frame, males. Everybody can operate that. If they're responsible enough, they're big enough to operate a motor vehicle, they're certainly big enough to operate an M4. And it's not going to kick them. It's not going to beat them up. Everybody can use it. With modern ammunition, the modern 5.56 223 amount of ammunition, number one, every manufacturer in the United States makes, if not one, several different loads for the 5.56 or 223. You can find the ammunition. It's out there. It's high quality. And if you buy I've been very, very impressed with the heavier weight bullets here as of late, and not just the weight, but the design of them. Your 77 grain bullets, right now the Bowtail hollow points are being loaded in the Mark 262 cartridge, are fantastic. They do great things against biological targets, against, animals. And our troopers overseas right now are doing, they're doing God's work with M16s and M4s chambered in these new cartridges. They're doing fantastic things against the enemies of this nation with that cartridge, and it's working out for them. Accessories. In the United States of America today, there is not one specific rifle that has more accessories available to it than the current M4. There just isn't. And as I come to the radio microphone this week, I can tell you that the back orders for magazines, parts, and components that have been, from December and January and what have you, all backed up, they're being filled. I believe this week we went to Brownells.com and they were having some kind of a big magazine blowout sale. They were selling aluminum mil-spec mags for like $10.95, something crazy. I mean, just like practically giving them away. So the magazines are available. And if you're not, if you're the guy who held out and said, I'm not paying $99 for a mag, good for you. I'm glad that you didn't do that. But today's the day. The components are out there. Now, I know it's harder to find ammunition than it was a year and a half ago, but it's out there. We checked around online this week. There is 223 or 5.56 available. You can pick it up right now. So for the rifle, some type of Stoner, original Stoner design, that's Gene Stoner for those of you who don't know, AR or M4 style rifle. And if you get one with a flat top rail, you can put anything, any type of sights or optics you want on it. You can put, your standard iron sights, a red dot. You can put a magnified optic, a variable power optic, whatever you need to do. So get one of those. Now, what's part two? Now, the part two is a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun of some style. And I know you guys out there, a lot of you are like, no, I want a 20-gauge because it's easier for my wife and my kids to shoot. And, okay, I've got you. But when it comes to ammunition, there's a greater variety and of 12-gauge ammunition. There's more different loads available to you than any other load. It's not comparable. Whether you want to use birdshot, whether you want to use buckshot, whether you want to use slugs, whether you want to use some kind of, specialty load. And now I know specialty loads like the flares and smoke and what have you. Those things are more expensive, but they are out there. And the great thing, the reason that you say, well, if I've got a rifle, what do I need a shotgun for? I don't need that. We're building an arsenal here. We're building several guns because there are things that a shotgun will do that a rifle won't do. For instance, if you have venomous type pests or threats, if you have, pest animals or varmints, a bird shot or a light load of shot is quite often, better to use on that type of a creature than a rifle bullet. I mean, if you're down south or you're anywhere where you have venomous slithering threats like we have down here, you probably agree to me that the 12-gauge shotgun is good medicine for dangerous pests like that, much better than a 223. So the 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, you're like, well, but Paul, aren't there really good, I should get a Saiga or, some type of a Benelli semi-auto or what have you. Yes, you can do that, and that's fantastic. But we're talking about something that you can use all kinds of different ammunition in. Unfortunately, the more expensive semi-auto guns, there aren't as many accessories for them. And some guns, not all, but some tend to be finicky eaters. Some of your semi-automatic guns tend to be real finicky eaters, and if you don't use a high brass, powerful load in them, they won't cycle properly. There's never going to be a problem unless it's a broken gun with a pump-action gun. They're pretty straightforward, whether it's a Remington, a Mossberg, what have you. So that is part two. That is the second one, is a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun of some style. Okay, so we got our rifle, we got our shotgun, we got that covered. Now, the last one, this is going to be the greatest point of contention of all of them. For whatever reason, American men, and it's primarily American men, not women, have decided to attach their ego to their choice of firearm. I'm not even going to explain or try and explain why or even think about why, but it is a fact. Men attach more of their ego to their handguns than anything else or any other firearm. And if you suggest that someone carry a gun other than your favorite, then you're a heretic and you need to be burned at the cross or burned at the stake. But when it comes to, and we're talking about Patriot Arsenal, this is something for the entire family. And what I will say, and this is what our Patriot Arsenal includes, some type of striker-fired 9mm handgun. Now, that could be a Smith & Wesson M&P. That could be a Ruger SR9. It could be an XD, a Springfield XD. It could be a Glock 17. But when it comes to simplicity, ease of action, and the fact that they work all the time, you really can't beat them. And as far as 9mm ammunition is concerned, yes, I know, again, it's hard to find ammo, but you can find it. And the ammunition that's manufactured today, especially personal defense ammunition, is better than it ever has been. And it's not just you, Sparky. You're like, oh, man, I got my 1911. I'm good to go, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fantastic. Rock on. But what about your teenage kids? What about your wife? We're not just about you. It's because can everybody in the family use all of these firearms? And the fact of the matter is it's much easier to train and teach someone to use a pistol like the M&P 9 than any other kind of firearm. And if they hold enough ammunition so that if your teenage daughter has to use one to defend her life against some nasty, felons, some thugs like broke into that house in Texas, then she can actually have rounds left over when the fight is completed rather than run out of rounds in the middle of the fight. So The Patriot Arsenal that we have set up, now you might set it up differently. And if you want to do that, drive on, go crazy. This is America. You can do what you want. But those are the reasons why we did what we did, why we chose what we chose. And if you're a new gun person or, kind of a neophyte, or you're like, well, I got a 22 rifle, but I don't really have any defensive guns, this might be a good place for you to start. What I will tell you is this. Right now, as you are going to hear this the first week of September 2013, 6, 7, 8 months ago, we were talking to people, and people were telling us things like, I'm thinking about getting a defensive handgun for my house, or I'm thinking about buying a rifle, or stop. If you've already come to the conclusion that that's something that you need, that you should have at your home, stop thinking about it and do it. Because what's going to happen is you're going to spend more time thinking about it and less time doing it. And then 6 months from now, there's going to be another gun crisis. Things are going to go through the roof, and you're going to be mad that you didn't get what you wanted to get when you could have gotten it. Now is the time. Jared and I, we've been shopping around. We went to Academy Outdoors. We went to local Cook's Gun Shop in Biloxi, Mississippi. The shelves right now are full. They're full. And the great news for you guys, Mr. and Mrs. Gun Owning America, is right now the prices are back down in the very, very reasonable range. Why? Because the manufacturers have caught up to all those back orders for black rifles and shotguns and pistols and what have you. They're back. If you've been thinking about it, now's the time. Not next week, not 2 months from now. Now is the time. And I don't want to hear crying and whining and complaining in 8 months or 9 months when the prices are double or triple what they are today and you waited. You're an adult. You're an American. Take care of yourself and take care of your business. So that is the Patriot Arsenal. Jared, what do you got for him?
I was just going to be the bad guy. Am I allowed to be the bad guy?
I guess. Go ahead.
We're coming up on 50 minutes right now, so we've got to wrap it up.
Okay. Well, now, by the time you hear this, by the time you hear the sound of my voice on Student of the Gun Radio, we will have picked our KSG winner. The grand prize, the winner for season 4 will be picked. And in order to find out who the lucky winner was, not only of the KSG, but the 5 runner-up prizes, you need to go to Student of the Gun on Facebook. Student of the Gun Facebook. And now obviously we'll put them out, in other ways, but that they're going to be there.
What I want you to do right now is follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, both of our YouTube channels, Google+, Pinterest, Instagram, and Vimeo, and join the conversation with hashtag Student of the Gun. That was a mouthful.
Or at least one of those things. Now, don't forget, Student of the Gun TV is on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. It's Dish Network, channel 266. You can always go to studentofthegun.com to join the conversation, watch the videos, read the articles, listen to the show. Until next time, we want you to remember that you are a beginner once, but you should be a student for life.